All right, we are recording.
So hi everyone, my name is Amy Stone and I am a youth advisor for DISHN, which is the Disability Inclusive Sexual Health Network, which is a mouthful that basically means we get together and we talk and we advocate for like sexual health and that kind of thing. But if you're watching this recording in the future, the most important thing to realize is that loneliness can come at you at any point and you are not alone. So I'm gonna go through a couple slides, and yes, there are some pictures in this presentation that I'm going to try my best to audio describe, just in case you happen to be listening and not exactly watching and are able to watch. I'm hoping to create give you as much audio description as I possibly can. So if we go on the next slide, you guys will see pop up on the screen is a disclaimer slide. So basically, I am Amy, I have CP, and the stories that I am about to share are by no means representative of everyone's experience with CP. They are just mine, and I am here to try and shed some light on a couple different things. So feel free to, if you're watching this on YouTube later, leave your experience down below too, because I would love to see it. If we go on to the next slide. So these, I believe, Maddie, can you help me?
Yeah, here we have some statistics about loneliness from peer-reviewed research articles. And they say, first, that disabled people experience significantly higher rates of loneliness than non-disabled people, which means it's really important to study these things, especially in the way that they relate to sexual health in terms of healthy relationships and coping and all sorts of things. It's also a really huge magnitude of people who are disabled and feel lonely. In fact, in the UK, there was a report in a recent study that was done that says 61% of disabled people in the UK report being chronically lonely, which is over half. It's a really big problem that often is not talked about. So, but it's really important because according to studies that we have in our final fact here, loneliness is associated with worse physical and mental health. So it's extremely important that we support people to overcome loneliness and to cope with loneliness that they're experiencing so that they can have better well-being and physical and mental health.
So those statistics to me just kind of magnify and prove what I've noticed in my own life, which is when I am lonely or feeling isolated, sometimes I have trouble figuring out a plan for my day, because loneliness for me, it makes me tired. Isolation is another word that you're going to hear me use a lot, and that also makes me tired. I'm lucky because I have a job and I can use that as a way to help others, But if we go on to the next slide. So on the screen, there are a bunch of bubbles, which in your head, if it's easier to think of these are the bulleted lists that Maddie's getting ready to read off, go ahead and think of it that way, my friends.
All right, contributing factors to loneliness: social isolation, inaccessibility, exclusive practices, ableism, misunderstanding, family dynamics, caregiver attitudes, health status, societal views, technology, discrimination, social marginalization, and low resource access, lack of supports needed, and transportation issues are all related and contributing factors for loneliness.
And friends, the most important thing to realize is that this is not an exhaustive list. You can, if you have something that you feel makes you feel a little bit more lonely or isolated, that's okay too. I just know that these are some of the factors that make me kind of feel lonely, and I'm hoping to maybe shed some light on some ways that we can overcome these. If we go on to the next slide.
Stigma.
Stigma is, it kind of can get in the way sometimes, because people in the able-bodied population might make some assumptions about people with disabilities as partners or as friends, and these might be quite damaging or hard to handle or hard to ignore. So one of the ones that I've dealt with in my own life is just people kind of, or I sort of in the past have seen myself as kind of burden, and I think that a lot of that has to do with the inaccessibility side of my life. However, here's the deal. We are not a burden, and whoever needs to hear this tonight or whenever you happen to be listening to the recording, you are not a burden. And also, FYI, my friends, even if it's harder for some of us to get out and like come out of isolation, sometimes it doesn't mean we don't want and or need social engagement or interaction. So just keep that in mind, that even if we're like, I'm not feeling well, or I don't have the energy, you may even hear people talk about, I don't have the spoons today. Just keep in mind that we're not trying to push you away if you are trying to be a friend. Just keep in mind that like we also have our own needs that can sometimes be quite medical. If we go on to the next slide. Okay,
The importance of caregivers. People with intellectual and developmental disabilities specifically have an average social network of about 3 people. And of those 3 people, at least one of them is a paid support worker. So it's important to think about in general. People with IDD have limited networks, and there's a huge impact of support workers in people with disabilities lives, with like, if in this example 1/3 of their social network is made of caregivers.
Caregivers make up a lot of my social network, but I also have friends that are not paid staff, and that's important too. It is truly important that if you are a caregiver, know that we're people too, and we want to be treated as such. And I think, Maddie, is there anything else on this slide that I'm missing?
That since caregivers have such an important responsibility, it's really critical for them to support people going outside and socializing.
So part of my story is that I've had caregivers come in and out of my life for an unspecific amount of time. But it's a lot. It's very important for people to understand that when you want to go out and you need a caregiver to take you, it's important that that caregiver that you're with is willing and able to kind of help you with that desire. So I've had many caregivers who are awesome at this, and I've also had many that are kind of nervous around it, and I think they're also nervous because of the stigma. But I had one caregiver specifically who was willing but not able to come with me outside, and part of that is she had her own diagnoses, and one of which being that she was visually impaired. If you are an agency listening to this in the future, please make sure your matches, that you match the right caregiver with the right client, because that can make or break a situation. So I think if we move on to the next one, we can, and then I
work with caregivers.
Work with them. So create, Maddie, you may have to help me here. Creating a to-do list?
Yes.
On here. Okay, so here are some tips for if you are having trouble. Caregiving management is kind of a harder thing to do, and I get that. So here are some tips. Creating a to-do list with the caregivers in mind. So telling them, hi, good morning, I want to do ABC. I have a habit of doing this before I even get out of bed in the morning, because when they come in my room, I set the tone. I'm just like, hi, good morning. And often if they speak a different home language than I do, I will try and translate my to-do list into their language, because I figured out that helps with some of the barriers. And here's another one. Reminding caregivers, I think we have it here as reminding caregivers of their job description. So if they are resistant of helping to make you food, technically, my friends, that is a part of their job. They can't exactly refuse that. So I think there's one more tip. Maddie, can you help me?
No, those are the tips you have of
Cool.
creating a plan or a to-do list with the caregivers. And secondly, using self-advocacy to remind caregivers that socialization and facilitating your day-to-day activities is a part of their job description.
Mm-hmm. So if we go on to the next slide.
Physical touch.
Physical touch is important, especially when well, for me, I'm a full-time Hoyer lift user, which essentially means a machine that is on a track system up on my ceiling is also picking me up. And it kind of can make, it doesn't always, well, let me just put it this way. A machine does not feel like a human. It feels completely different. I've gotten used to it, but I still need human physical touch. If you are working with someone who's resisting maybe a transition between physical, like being handled by human versus being handled by machine, one thing you can do is tell them that you're gonna keep a hand on them so that they learn to trust the machine. So if we go on the next slide, and I know that this one is a fun one for me.
All right, there's one more statistic on this slide, Amy, that just shares that physical touch is important because it's shown to reduce loneliness and to improve well-being. So it's an important thing to consider for people with disabilities as something that's not often thought about, but an important thing that everybody needs. All right. Next slide.
So I have a story, and it's very special to me being able to share. And Maddie, I might have you read some of the details off the screen, but I don't always, like I was explaining in the last slide, I don't always get to be handled by hand anymore. That is not something that I take for granted anymore. So I am very thankful for some of my friends who can pick me up and give me some type of physical reassurance that everything is okay and yes, I am safe. It does mean a lot more to, and this, a little bit of a disclaimer here, this depends on the person. Some kids, people, individuals might not still need physical contact from a human as much as I do. My love language is touch. My safe language is touch. What I mean by a safe language is growing up, before I had all my equipment, if I didn't have a hand on me, it meant I was going to fall. So when you switch from, if I don't have a hand on me, I'm gonna fall, to this huge machine is coming up around you, it can be kind of alarming. If you are working with someone who is again resistant, keep a hand on them at first, and just keep in your mind that being handled by equipment isn't something that the able-bodied world often has to deal with. So even when someone might be telling you very firmly that, oh my goodness, you don't understand how this feels, unless you've been in the equipment, you can relate to them. But truth be told, the feeling that we feel is specific within our own bodies. So again, I am so thankful to those people that can handle me, can pick me up, and choose to still do that. And if you can be that person for somebody else, that is very valuable. But also, I want to put this out there too. If you are someone who physically handling someone by hand would hurt you, please don't try. Because at the end of the day, if you think it's going to hurt you, it most likely could also hurt the person if they slip. So use your own discretion as you're in this journey with your specific human being that you're working with. So if we go, did I miss anything off the slide?
Nope.
All right, if we get to the next one. So accessibility, are we there? Do I have that right?
Yes.
On the slide, there's a couple clip-on pictures, but the one at the bottom is a I call them grabbers. They probably have a different name. But we can use it as an extension of a hand when we can't grab. So if I'm in a wheelchair, which I am all the time, so I don't know why I said but when I'm in my wheelchair, I can reach down with the grabber and help out with like get the thing off the floor. So accessibility is simple. If you are a shop owner and I am by stairs, I can't access the items that you have in your store if I can't get through or into your entrance. So what's really important is if you have stairs, also have a ramp. So if you have a no for a wheelchair user, also have a yes. do you think I covered everything on the slide?
Yep. Just the main point that you have written here is, if I cannot get into the building, then I cannot socialize. And every time I face barriers to get into a building and access a social space, I'm reminded of my otherness.
So universal design, my friends, is really important too. So that's just a thing. But if we go on to the next slide. So these are a bunch of bubbles that Maddie's gonna read off, and then I'm gonna share.
Find resources, developing self-esteem and self-advocacy, pursuing your passions, finding groups that cater to your interests, supportive physical touch, planning and making a to-do list, helping others, expanding your network, therapy, developing social skills that work for you, utilizing technology like phone or Zoom, etc., having a supportive work environment, accommodations and accessibility, having your needed supports, and finding safe people.
So again, not an exhaustive list, but a list to get you guys started. If you're having trouble finding resources or making plans, try and find trusted people that can kind of help you navigate your path. If we go to the next slide.
Self-esteem and self-advocacy.
So I did a whole other presentation on this, but just to keep it brief, Maddie, can you read off what we have on the slide?
Yep. Developing self-esteem and acceptance can help you to feel more confident in yourself and your ability to make friends, and therefore can help you to put yourself out there more in social situations. As well as strong self-advocacy skills can help you to maintain friendships and stand up for your right to socialization. Sometimes when it's being denied to you, self-advocacy can be a good way to achieve the socialization that you deserve. And there is a link to see Amy's presentation on self-esteem for those who are interested.
So remember, you have like access is a right. So if you're having trouble figuring out if it's taking a toll on you, reach out or call out, do whatever you can to make a difference for yourself. So if we go to the next slide. Okay.
And activities.
So you guys might be wondering why I am in. So for context, for those of you who are listening to the recording and might be missing images, there is a picture on the screen of me in a yellow feathery costume, and I have a basket over my head that's connected to my chair by 2 different poles, and then I have a PVC pipe that's leading as a chute down to a tray. I was in a play at one point where I was a chicken that was supposed to lay eggs, and the bunny is actually the set designer that designed that set piece. He took my chair and turned it into a part of my whole costume. So whenever you are working with someone, it might take some creativity to make something like this happen. But this is the only way I could lay eggs, which meant that this was the only way I could play that role. And yes, I'm a full-time public speaker, and sometimes I do things like be a chicken in a play, but that's okay. It's a lot of fun. Sometimes I just need to do random stuff to have fun. Also, I had a farmer. My farmer was actually a full-time intern for this specific organization. So the more that you can accommodate for individuals with disabilities, the better, because the more included we will feel. And yes, I look at that picture and I laugh every single time. So if we go to the next one.
Expanding your network.
So expanding your network in every way possible is important. As someone who receives care, it's extra important to constantly be doing recruitment work, but just expanding your network of friends too will also assist in many ways. Sometimes my schedule makes me feel stuck with certain people at certain times, but if you can expand your network and just help yourself out. So to do that, I think somewhere we have it list. Maddie, if you don't mind just helping be our eyes.
Yep.
And if there's anything that I also missed in the slide.
So ways to expand your network can include local community centers, Facebook and social media groups, and online connections, volunteering, and having that experience of helping others and that connection that gets created when you help other people, as well as through advocacy organizations and support groups that those groups can host clubs and groups related to your passions, and also local events or gathering places like coffee shops or things like that. And we also have in this slide a prompt for Amy to share any personal experience of creating networks through their volunteering or other areas.
I made some great friends volunteering. I work in various environments, but one of them is I volunteer with some very special friends that have very special, sometimes very medical needs. So I've made a couple awesome friends that are EMTs, through that. I've just volunteering was my life before I figured out I could get paid for stuff. So I met a lot of my friends through volunteering, and I found my voice as an outlet through telling my story on stage in front of thousands of people. So I know that that might not be some people's cup of tea, but the more that you can put yourself out there, maybe it's not writing a 45-minute play about your life, maybe it's just a 2-minute crazy video that you film just to show your group of friends. Push yourself and make sure that you can expand your network that way. So this slide just says, I think I'm visually impaired too, so I think it says any questions. So if you're watching this later and it's not live and you're like, I do have questions, but I'm gonna try and keep an eye on the comment section. And I'm also gonna just, if you're watching this presentation from some other platform, just try and find a way of letting me know what the questions are, because I'm happy to start a conversation.